This film begins by showing America during the Prohibition era, a time when alcohol was illegal. Then, a wanderer named John Smith is driving his car from Texas to Mexico. Through his thoughts, we learn that John is always on the move. This time, he decides to stop in a small town called Jericho, which is about 50 kilometers from the American-Mexican border. The town is controlled by two big gangs. So, one led by Irish gangsters under Doyle, and the other by Italian gangsters led by Fredo Strozzi. When John arrives in Jericho, he sees some gang members hanging out by the road. At that time, a coffin seller even smiles at him, which feels a bit creepy. But before John can even step into Jericho, he gets into trouble with Doyle's gang. It happens because John accidentally looks at a woman named Felina, who happens to be Doyle's girlfriend, as she crosses the road. This makes the gang angry, and they damage John's car, leaving him really upset. Frustrated, John goes to the sheriff's office to report what happened. But instead of helping him, the two cowardly sheriffs, Ed Galt and Bob, just tell John to leave the town as soon as possible. While waiting for his car to be fixed, John walked to an inn and decided to have a drink at a bar owned by a man named Joe Monday. While they were talking, John found out that the gangsters who messed up his car were part of the Irish gang. Joe explained that the Irish gang and the Italian gang had been enemies ever since both groups came to Jericho. Their constant fighting had even made a lot of people in the town decide to move away to safer places. After Joe told John where the Irish gang's headquarters was, John went back to his room and got his gun ready. He wanted to confront Doyle's men who damaged his car. When John arrived at the Irish gang's headquarters, he asked them to pay for the damage to his car. But instead of talking it out, Doyle's men tried to shoot John. Realizing he was in danger, John quickly pulled out his gun and shot them first, killing them. News about John's victory in the shootout spread quickly. And Strozzi, the leader of the Italian gang, was impressed with John's shooting skills, especially because John had taken down Doyle's men, including one of their best shooters who was currently away in Mexico. Strozzi decided to meet with John and offered him a job with the Italian gang. He explained that they might soon be at war with the Irish gang once their top shooter returns from Mexico, so Strozzi needed John's gunfighting skills. Strozzi even offered to pay John a good amount of money. Tempted by the offer, John agreed to join the Italian gang. Soon after, Strozzi asked his personal assistant and girlfriend, Lucy Kalinsky, to show John to the room they had prepared for him. That evening, John had dinner with the members of the Italian gang. During the meal, Strozzi introduced John as their best shooter. However, Giorgio Carmonti, Strozzi's younger cousin and close advisor, didn't agree with the decision to hire John. Giorgio thought that bringing John into their gang might break the ceasefire agreement they had with the Irish gang in Jericho. But Strozzi didn't care and stuck to his decision. Not wanting to cause more trouble between the two brothers, John decided to go back to Joe's motel. Once he was in his room, John called for a call girl to keep him company for the night. But it turned out that the woman was actually a spy sent by Doyle and his men. This led to a shootout at the motel, with John having to defend himself against the gangsters who were sent to kill him. On that rainy night, when Strozzi heard about the attack, he quickly ordered Lucy to go pick up John from the motel. Strozzi then gathered all his gang members outside the city. As John and Lucy were on their way to the meeting place, John tried to learn more about Strozzi's mysterious first name. Lucy explained that Strozzi's first name was something special and wasn't used casually. She only called him by his first name when they were alone together. Soon after John and Lucy arrived, Strozzi announced to his men that he had learned that Doyle had taken control of their drink supplier from Mexico. Because of this, Strozzi planned to teach the Irish gang a lesson by hijacking the truck carrying drinks meant for Doyle. On the day of the hijacking, everything went according to plan. The local officials who were supposed to protect the delivery of drinks for Doyle had been bribed by Strozzi, so they switched sides and helped Strozzi instead. Thanks to these corrupt officers, the hijacking was successful. Later on, John met with Ed at the sheriff's office and asked him to make sure that the call girl, who had been caught spying for Doyle, could leave town safely. John knew that if she stayed, Doyle would likely kill her for failing her mission. John also told Ed that Strozzi's men had hijacked the truck carrying Doyle's drinks from Mexico. John shared this information hoping that Ed would sell it to Doyle for $1,000. Ed was unsure about trusting John because he feared for his life if the information turned out to be false. He explained how dangerous Hickey was, sharing that Hickey had killed his own father when he was just 10 years old. After his father's death, Hickey was sent to an orphanage, but when he was 15, he burned it down and killed everyone inside. Hearing this, John assured Ed that the information was real and asked Ed to share the money he would get from selling it. A little later, John visited Lucy in her room because Strozzi and Giorgio were out of town. John asked Lucy to give him information about Strozzi because he planned to sell it to Doyle. John promised to share the money with Lucy if the deal went through. And Lucy, who secretly had feelings for John, couldn't resist his request, especially after John charmed her into spending the night together. The next day, Doyle came to John and offered him a chance to join the Irish gang. Doyle was even willing to pay a lot of money if John accepted the offer. But John didn't give an answer right away and told Doyle he needed time to think about it. After meeting with Doyle, John went to Strozzi's headquarters and told him that he wanted to quit being a member of the Italian gang. This made Giorgio really angry because he suspected that Doyle had offered John more money. John didn't clear things up on purpose because he wanted the tension between the two gangs to get worse. A few days later, Hickey, who had just returned to Jericho, heard that Strozzi's gang had hijacked his truck carrying drinks from Mexico. This news made Hickey furious, and he planned to take revenge on Strozzi and his gang. The next day, John went to the repair shop to check on his car. The mechanic told him that a few days ago, someone came by asking about the owner of the car he was fixing. There, John suspected that the person was Giorgio, who might be trying to get rid of him. Realizing that his life was in danger, John decided to make the two gangs in Jericho fight each other. When John returned to the motel, he quickly called Giorgio and told him that Doyle had found out about the Italian gang hijacking the Irish gang's drink truck. John warned Giorgio to be careful because there were rumors that Doyle planned to kill Strozzi, who was now working with a man named Ramirez, the chief of police at the border. Even though John was no longer part of the Italian gang, he assured Giorgio that his information was accurate. That evening, John met with Lucy to exchange information about what was happening with Strozzi and his gang. Lucy revealed that Giorgio was heading to Mexico to meet Ramirez, having fallen for John's warning. The next day, John went to the Irish gang and told them that Giorgio was going to Mexico to bribe Ramirez as part of a plan by the Italian gang to hijack another drink truck. John cleverly suggested to Doyle that they should capture Giorgio, who was Strozzi's cousin. Hearing this, Doyle was pleased and gave John a wad of money for the information, but John only took $2,000 as they had agreed earlier. During this meeting, Doyle also asked John if he had decided to join the Irish gang. Unfortunately, John said he was still thinking about it, which annoyed Doyle. Later, Doyle sent Hickey to Mexico to stop the meeting between Giorgio and Ramirez. When Hickey arrived at the bar where Giorgio was meeting Ramirez, he pulled out his gun and started shooting at the bar patrons, including Ramirez. And Giorgio, realizing he was in danger, decided to surrender instead of getting caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, John went to an old church in a remote part of Jericho, where he found Felina praying for her late daughter. Felina shared her sad story with John. She had once been married to a poor man and had a daughter. But Doyle, who loved Felina deeply, kidnapped her, and as a result, she lost her daughter. John was surprised to see Felina at the church without any guards. Felina explained that the church was the only place where Doyle wouldn't send anyone to watch over her. When John returned to town, he met Captain Tom Pickett, a senior Texas Ranger. There, Tom asked John to help get rid of the gangsters in Jericho so that the town wouldn't be disturbed by their feuding. Tom advised John to continue playing both sides without fully joining either gang, so he could help destroy one of them. Tom gave John 10 days to complete this task and allowed him to use any methods necessary to get the job done. Meanwhile, Hickey and his men went to the Italian gang's headquarters and told them that they had captured Giorgio. They demanded a ransom of $100,000 if Strozzi wanted to save Giorgio. At that time, the two gangs agreed to make the exchange near the U.S. and Mexico border the next afternoon. On the day of the exchange, Strozzi and his men met with Hickey, who was holding Giorgio hostage. But Strozzi had secretly kidnapped Felina as a bargaining chip for Giorgio. Instead of bringing real money, Strozzi filled his suitcase with stacks of paper, which made Doyle furious, but he couldn't do anything since Felina was still being held by Strozzi. Strozzi then told Doyle to hand over Giorgio if he wanted to save Felina. Because of his deep love for Felina, Doyle agreed to the deal and took her away from the scene. The next day, Lucy met with John after Strozzi kicked her out of the gang's headquarters. Lucy told John that the night before, Strozzi had gotten really drunk and beat her up badly because she accidentally called him by his first name. Feeling like she couldn't take life in Jericho anymore, Lucy asked John for help to escape the town as soon as possible. Without hesitation, John gave her some money so she could start a new life in another city. That evening, John met with Doyle and told him that he had decided to join the Irish gang led by Doyle. However, John asked to be paid upfront for his services. Doyle agreed, knowing that John was a skilled shooter. John then asked where Felina was, pretending to be worried about her safety if Strozzi caused more trouble. Not suspecting anything, Doyle told John where Felina was hiding, protected by 8 guards. John then warned Doyle that this wasn't enough protection because he had heard that Strozzi had hired over 20 shooters from out of town to attack them. This made Doyle anxious, so he asked John to go and protect Felina at the safe house. When John arrived at the safe house, he went inside and quickly killed the guards who were having dinner. He then went upstairs where Felina was being held by another man. There, John didn't waste any time and shot the man, freeing Felina. He then gave her $1,000 that he got from Doyle and told her to leave Jericho as soon as possible. Before she drove away, Felina gave John her cross necklace as a way of saying thank you for helping her escape from Doyle's trap. The next day, Doyle and some of his men went to the safe house to check on Felina, but instead of finding her, they got bad news from John. John lied and told them that when he arrived, he found the guards already dead, but Felina was missing. And then, Doyle started to suspect that Strozzi had sent a group of shooters to kill his men. There, John explained that he didn't return to headquarters right away because he was waiting to see if Felina would come back, thinking she might have run away during the attack. However, she never returned, even by the time Doyle showed up. While Doyle seemed to believe John's story, Hickey was secretly suspicious that John might have been the one behind the attack. Because of this incident, Doyle decided to order his gang to attack Strozzi. Later on, when John returned to Jericho, Doyle and his men confronted him because they had discovered his lie. Doyle revealed that Strozzi wasn't responsible for the attack on Felina's safe house because it was John. They found out the truth after discovering the necklace Felina had given John in his jacket pocket. Without hesitation, Doyle ordered his men to drag John back to their headquarters and beat him up. In that moment, Doyle tried to force John to tell him where Felina was, but John stayed silent, so Doyle's men continued to beat him until he was badly injured. After John was left helpless, Doyle and his men left him there. Later, when Doyle's men went to check on John, they were shocked to find that he had escaped from the room where they had locked him up. Doyle quickly ordered his men to block all the exits from the city to catch John if he tried to escape. They also searched Joe's bar and motel but couldn't find him anywhere. There, Doyle became furious, and in his fear, Joe told them he had seen John at the casino, which was the headquarters of Strozzi's gang. After the Irish gangsters left, Joe quickly met with John, who had been hiding in Joe's ice storage area the whole time. Meanwhile, Doyle and his men attacked Strozzi's group at the casino, setting the place on fire, hoping that John, who they thought was hiding there, would burn to death. The next morning, Joe took John to the old church that Felina often visited, where they met with Ed, who had been waiting for them. Shortly after, Ed and Joe decided to head back to Jericho to avoid raising Doyle's suspicions. Unfortunately, Hickey caught Joe and realized he had lied when he found out John wasn't at the casino. Soon after, Hickey and his men tortured Joe, trying to force him to reveal John's whereabouts, but Joe refused to talk. Meanwhile, Ed, who saw Hickey arrest Joe, quickly reported it to John. Feeling grateful to Joe for helping him, John decided to go back to Jericho, even though he hadn't fully recovered yet. When John arrived at Doyle's headquarters, he launched an attack on Doyle's men to rescue Joe. Since Doyle and Hickey were known to be heading to Mexico for business, John asked Ed to deliver a message to them, saying that he would be waiting for them at the old church. One day, Doyle and Hickey finally came to see John at the church. Joe, who was also there but didn't want to get involved in John's problems, chose to hide when he saw the gangsters arriving. During their meeting, Doyle told John that he wanted to put the past behind them and asked John to join the Irish gang and work with Hickey. But John wasn't interested in the offer at all. Suddenly, Joe came out of hiding and shot Doyle. In the chaos, John quickly finished the job by shooting Doyle to death. Seeing his boss dead, Hickey told John that he didn't want to die in Texas and challenged him to a duel in Chicago someday. But this was just a trick, because turns out, Hickey secretly planned to attack John right there. However, John was quick to react and easily defeated Hickey. In the final scene of the film, John takes the cross necklace from Doyle's coat pocket and then drives away in the gangster's car, continuing his journey to Mexico. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is sometimes hiding in an ice cube storage can save your life, and never trust a gangster with a soft spot for cross necklaces.